All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson McKay.
You're listening to the Next Level Guy podcast, your backstage pass to becoming the man that you were born to be. You weren't broken. You were doing your best with the tools you had at the time. Shame won't heal you. Understanding will. And that's a quote from today's guest, Dr. Jaffe. But what if your addiction or your bad habits were never the real problem? In this eye-opening conversation, we discuss why we repeat the same patterns in our life, how shame keeps us stuck, and how to actually change your behaviour without hating yourself. It's time to rewire your brain, heal your shame, and learn Dr. Jaffe's tools for lasting transformation. We talk SPARROW, addiction recovery, emotional hooks, radical acceptance, and dealing with shame, and why relapse is not failure. Meet Dr. Jaffe, a former addict turned addiction recovery trailblazer. He's a best-selling author of The Abstinence Myth and Unhooked. He's the founder of Ignited Recovery and creator of powerful tools like the SPARROW and E.A.T principles. His mission? To help you ditch shame, understand your behaviour, and transform your life, one breakthrough at a time. He was once a meth addict and a drug dealer facing a 10-year prison sentence, but he turned his life around after hitting rock bottom. Following multiple failed rehab attempts, he committed to deep personal transformation, eventually earning a Ph.D. in psychology from UCLA. Today, he's a groundbreaking voice in addiction recovery, the author of The Abstinence Myth and Unhooked, and the founder of Ignited Recovery, helping thousands of people find their own peace and happiness through recovery and dealing with their own addictions. Through his unique SPARROW and E.A.T methods, he helps people overcome shame, understand their behaviour, and reclaim their lives without judgment and without needing to be perfect. If you like what you hear, tag Next Level Guy Podcast and share your biggest takeaways. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I genuinely mean it. When I read your book, I was blown away by the sheer honesty, vulnerability, and just the sense of hope that you give through your book. But for people who maybe don't recognize the name, how would you describe who you are?
That's interesting. I would describe myself as somebody who is incredibly passionate about continuously learning how to make myself, the people around me, the world around me better. And as somebody who learned the importance of that through my own experiences in lacking humility, lacking empathy, lacking a sense of who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. And that led me down some pretty dark paths. And so now I see my life as paying forward all the gifts that I've had since.
And you're certainly doing that. I mean, from when you see where you came from and where you are now, we all know that person who goes off the wrong tracks, but very rarely they come back as a sort of an inspirational story. What was the defining moment for you? You know, it was at a sleepaway camp, you got handed a bottle of vodka, like we all kind of do at that age, but what was it about that moment, do you think, that helped you along that initial journey?
Sorry, let me just make sure I understand the question. What is it that helped me get out of that journey once I got to the end of that phase of my life? Or what is it
So,
that kind of took me down that path?
what got you started in dealing with the addictive behaviors?
Mm. Look, I used to be incredibly uncomfortable with myself. I used to be really, really fearful and concerned constantly about what everybody thought of me. And when I say constantly, I mean constantly. Like, there was, if I was having a conversation with you, but we're in a room with people, as I was trying to figure out what you're thinking about every word that comes out of my mouth, which made it really hard to listen to what was coming out of your mouth, by the way. I was also trying to figure out what that person standing to our right was thinking about me if they looked
Yep.
at me, and that cute girl walking in the room. Am I standing right? Do I have the right clothes on? Is she going to like me? I mean, when I walked down the street, I was constantly scanning everything. Yes, in a important, self obsessed sort of way, but also a very scared, very anxious, forward way of looking at the world. I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. So everything that I did, from my porn use to my alcohol and weed use and eventually hard drug use and drug dealing, and the way I behaved while I was drug dealing, was really about trying to make up or create a persona, a mask of how I showed up in the world. And I would argue was relatively successful from the outside. Like,
Mhm.
most people who saw me from the outside didn't know the depths of discomfort that I was having inside. It was like that proverbial duck, right? They look all quiet and calm, but under the surface, their feet are constantly waddling. And I was stuck in that place for, I would argue, until midway through. So after my arrest, after my first rehab, which I got kicked out of, it started dawning on me that there's something I haven't learned, something I'm doing wrong that keeps landing me in these really terrible situations. And I would say that was really where true accountability landed for me. And what I mean by true accountability, if people don't understand what that means, is I'm the only person responsible for everything that happens in my life. I can't blame anybody, and even more importantly, maybe I can't expect anybody else to help get me out of this. They can support, but I'm the only one who can do the work. And so that was really the turning point. We can talk about a specific experience that led to that, but that was the turning point for me.
Because that's what I love about the book. It starts off with an arrest with a broken leg, with the SWAT team coming in, and you're kind of like, what, it blows you away. And then when you see it's the honesty that you put into each of these things and how open and honest that it's the sense of hope that you give in the book. And do you think that's why you needed to write it? Because we all suffer with a problem. We all drink to feel confident. We all take drugs to kind of numb the pain of not living up to our, like what our mission in life is. But we only demonize the ones who are really on the other side of the line, the extreme ones.
Yeah. Really, I mean, really, really great point. I do want to say something to a point you made earlier. I actually think it's wrong to assume that it's incredibly rare that people go really, really far down in life into
Mhm.
whatever their bottom is and make it out. I would argue many, many more people than you can imagine do that. The difference is not everybody's then willing to talk about how bad things were when they were bad,
Yeah.
right? The shame and the guilt and the desire to just move on means that most of those people will never tell you how bad their life got. They will just show you the shiny version of the new phase two, phase three, who knows, phase four of their life. So, yes, partially I wrote the book in order to share the journey. Partially I wrote the book because I've worked with thousands of clients now. And as I work with clients, the path to success becomes a little clear for me, right? And so I want to share my first book, The Abstinence Myth. I shared the version that I knew in 2018, which is 7 years ago. Over the last 7 years, I've worked with over 1,000 people, maybe even substantially more than that between groups and talks. And so I just wanted to share the new improved version. And I hopefully I will keep doing that. Um, what I learned in my work, which is what I kind of shared here, that I didn't know how to put into words in the Abstinence Myth in my first book is that too many people focus on the drinking, as you pointed out, or on their use, or on their porn, or on their pizza before bed eating every night. And they get so targeted in terms of saying, "Oh my gosh, this thing is destroying my life. I need to stop it," that they ignore all those things that you said we all know. We know them, but we hide it from ourselves
No.
because rarely, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but rarely do people go to the kitchen at 11 p.m. because they're having a hard time going to sleep, eat a quart of ice cream, and then go to bed with their stomach kind of full, but the sugar making them feel a little bit better, and go to themselves, man, this ice cream thing is really a coping strategy for all the things I hate about my relationship and my work, or the trauma I experienced as a child, or the fact that I feel disconnected from my kids and my colleagues and I feel alone all the time. Those feelings are there, but they're just under the surface. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to face it. And so we come up with all these really cool behaviors so we don't have to face it. So the hardest thing is coming to terms with the fact that we don't like our life and that's why we keep escaping it. That's one of the hardest things.
Because when I was reading the book, it really kind of hit home because when I was a child, I felt so like the black sheep. I didn't feel like I fitted in anywhere. There were groups, there was teams, there were cliques. And it really kind of made me understand where you were coming from throughout the book, where, that it gave you that sense of confidence to drink where you didn't really want to, but it gave you that little, the confidence booster. That you were getting, maybe had a bad relationship with your parents at the time, so what they were saying was affecting you. And, things that people just give as a throwaway comment could be what you use as your identity. How did you
Mm.
find that with a lot of clients? Do you find that a lot of the issues are stemming from their childhood? It's from the identity, the beliefs they get imposed on them at that age?
Yes, yes, and yes. So this is not true for everybody. I certainly have worked with clients where it started in college, it started later in life. Some people where really the ship turned for them when they were in their 40s. But if you want a rule of thumb of sorts, um, for the vast majority of people, the sort of beliefs, the sort of modeling, the kind of behavior they saw as children that then later they exhibited as adults got delivered on a silver platter, if you will, when they were kids. Because when we're kids, I give this example very explicitly in the book. We're like sponges. Like when you go to the kitchen, you pull out a brand new sponge and it's sparkling clean and it can take on anything. It sucks up water, it sucks up dirt, and it does a really good job of taking on whatever's around it. That's who we are as children. And I talk about this not only when I talk to people with addiction problems, I talk about this when I deal with executives and teams who don't understand why they have conflict. And I have to remind them, you think you're dealing with conflict like an adult, like a 48-year-old, 52-year-old adult who knows how to show up to an uncomfortable conversation with a colleague or an underling. But a lot of what you learn about how to manage conflict comes from childhood.
Hmm.
And so, what did that look like? Right. And you would be amazed how unaware many of us are regarding the massive impact. And we're talking from 0 to like 10, 12 years old. I mean, most people barely remember on a daily basis what being 0 to 12 years old was, but it shaped so much of the rest of their lives.
Because I'm not exaggerating, but every few pages I was stopping and highlighting and saying, that makes so much sense. That's where I can explain my obsessive compulsion. That's where I can put my intrusive thoughts to. And then I could link to the emotional hooks that you mentioned, the sponge analysis where you talk about using the pressure to bring it out. Yeah, it really hits home. But
Mm.
why is the current healing modalities focused on the outcome rather than treating it as, because they treat it as a disease, or they treat it as one whole thing where it's a individualized kind of syndrome? Why,
Yeah,
why, why do we treat it that way? Is it just it's cheaper to throw some tablets and some clinics at it, or
I think unfortunately, just like the problem of addiction itself, the reason we have the manners, the methods, the approaches to treat it also comes from a framing of the world. And that's what I talk about early in the book. Um, we see people's behavior. We don't understand what it took to get them there. And so if somebody's drinking a fifth, right, like a whole bottle of vodka every single day, we say, that's crazy. You should never drink that much. That is horrible for you. You should cut back on your drinking. And then they try and they can't do it. And we'd say, oh, you obviously are a sick person because this is very much bad for you. You now know it's bad for you because we told you and you can't stop. You're sick. Your brain is not working right. And then we went on an entire path to prove that. And guess what? The brains of people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol are different than the brains of people who didn't. But then we made the conclusion that they're different because they were born that way. They had the sickness, this disease, and we just didn't know it until they started drinking, using porn too much, eating, taking drugs, all that kind of stuff. The assertion I make is people's experience in life change them. They then end up relying on a substance or a behavior, and that changes their brain over time. And so what we end up seeing is we end up seeing the outcome is the symptom of what was underlying versus the outcome is the cause of what was underlying. But Ian, that's the way we deal with all health issues in this country, at least, right?
mm,
Um, People bitch and complain about the fact that I think it's over 40% of Americans are obese now. But it's literally in the last couple of years that we started talking about, well, what's in our food, right? What are we allowing companies to put in food? And it's, I would argue refined sugar is one of the earliest drugs, man. Um, it's not something you can get in nature. You have to purify it. So you're taking this impact. Like when you eat fruit, you get sugar, but you don't get a sugar high from fruit. I mean, unless you start downing, berries or something. But in nature, you don't have that. So we've got people addicted to cheap, horrible for them, but super satisfying foods. That's good for the McDonald's. That's good for the Wendy's. That's good for the fast food companies that sell horrible stuff, cereals. I mean, some cereals have like 40 grams of sugar per serving. I urge everybody listening to this right now to take a cup at home and measure what 40 grams of sugar looks like. And I want to ask you if you would add that to any piece of food that you would eat, if you had to add it, like if it wasn't already in the food. I think
no.
for most people, the answer is no. So we're bitching about obesity, but the response should be substantially improved food standards, like from childhood. The response should be massive health um, undertakings in schools. And I'm talking like kindergartens and daycares, right? Like that's what we should do, but we don't because that's the hard stuff. If I start fixing the food supply for kids now, when am I going to see the results? In 20 years, 15 years. So that means I have to show up consistently for 15 years to get something out of it. And I would argue in addiction, the work that I do, a lot of people complain that I give people an easier way because I don't mandate abstinence in my programs. And I say, no, no, I don't mandate abstinence because we work on the really hard stuff, right? We get people to go into their deepest demons and we help them fix that. Because once they fix that, they don't need to drink like they needed to drink before. But it
No.
takes a year or 2 years or three. It takes time to get that kind of level of depth.
Because that's what I liked about the book is you used your client stories like Usman, where you talked about why it's just pointless saying to somebody who's struggling, just stop drinking completely, get clean, just completely give up, because a lot of times you're using that as to deal with the emotional hook that we've got into. You're not drinking because you like it. You're drinking to numb the pain. You're using porn. You're using drugs, whatever it is. Do you think that's what people are so focused on? Just stop it all without realizing the impact it actually has on the people and what they're using it for?
Yeah, I think I mean, look, I get it. hey, you're drinking too much. If you stop drinking, you'll stop struggling. It looks like it makes sense.
Hmm.
I would just wish, I would pray that after 100 years of doing that, with a failure rate that's higher than 90%, some of us would go, hey, maybe the system is broken. But what we've done most of the time is we've blamed the patients, we've blamed the clients. We say things like, you don't want this enough. And I don't even think I put that story in this book because I definitely put it in the Abstinence Myth, but I put it around depression. But imagine a cancer patient going to get cancer treatment and being given radiation and chemotherapy and maybe even a surgery, and then the cancer comes back. Imagine that we say to the client, come on, Ian, you got to really want this. I mean, if you don't really want to get cured of
Hmm.
cancer, then I can't, this medication is never going to work for you. That sounds insane, but we do it to people at addiction all the time. And it's hard when your whole life, like one of the examples I give in the book is a woman who came to me to stop smoking weed. She'd stopped all the other drugs, everything else she could handle. She comes to me to stop smoking weed, and it's the one thing that she hasn't been able to, but it's keeping her from getting the kind of jobs that she wants. And it ends up turning out that when she was growing up, junior high, high school kind of level, you're talking 12 years old, 11 years old, she had massive social anxiety. Like she would throw up because of panic attacks every time she had to do something in public. And one day a friend gave her a hit of a weed joint, and within 30 seconds, it fixed all of it. How many 11-year-olds who are throwing up in the bathroom and on the side of the road regularly because they're so anxious would say, hey, this thing fixed my nausea. I feel better now. I feel more normal. How many 11-year-olds would have the wherewithal to say, yeah, but this, I heard from the adults that this is really bad for me, so I shouldn't do this? I would argue very few. But
Definitely.
now the problem is you take that 11-year-old, you get her at age 45, she's been smoking weed for 34 years. She forgot that she started because she was throwing up on the side of the bus because it's been 34 years since she's done that because weed has worked to alleviate the anxiety. The problem, it didn't actually work to alleviate or fix the issues that made her feel anxious in the first place.
Because that's what I love about when you explain about Sparrow, by using the EAT
Mm,
technique, because that was the first time I'd ever seen it explained as in it's not just a chemistry breakdown, that's causing you to think like this. It's not the trauma that you can't get over. It's actually how you are reacting to it, but it's also the stimuli to the perception, and it can be two people can see completely the same thing and have complete different reactions to it. And it made so much sense. I was sitting there going back, going, "That's why my I compare myself. That's where my insane jealousy came from. When it's this person doing it, but not that person, because it reminds
mm,
me of this story." And it was like you were opening up like a video game map. You were shining the light on all these kind of routes, and I was like, where has he been all my life? Because it really
that's
made
funny.
me
I love that.
understand my brain and thinking. Could you give an example or kind of explain? I know it's a whole book's worth, but what Sparrow is, what E is, how these concepts will open
Yeah.
up and change your thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is just off the cuff right now. I'm just thinking of this example as you were talking, but what's your favorite kind of music, Ian?
Rock music.
Okay. Like name a band that is
Oh,
like
like
a style of rock you really
Aerosmith,
like.
Metallica, that kind of thing.
Okay. Cool. Like 90s, 80s, like rock and roll. I love it. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect. So, I guess Aerosmith started in the 70s. But do you know anybody who really doesn't like that music?
yeah.
You do, right? So the same song could be playing and you are rocking out, man. You're just loving it. It's the best thing ever. And your friend, your spouse, your kid, whoever, right? My kids and I have completely different taste in music. Um, could be sitting right next to you, listening to the exact same thing coming at them and cringing and wanting nothing but if for it to end. And all you want is the next song to play because you're so happy this is playing. We have preferences that are built into us because of experiences. You don't just like, it's not like Aerosmith is good music and this other thing is bad music. We say that all the time, but that's BS. That's not really true. Music is fully subjective, right? And so, what people don't understand or have not had the appreciation for at a deep level, most people, I believe, is that is all life. All life is completely subjective. We were just all born into situations that where we were told this is good and this is bad. This is right and this is wrong. This is
Hmm.
what you should do for a living and this is what you should stay away from. This is who you should love and this is who you should not. This is what you should believe in. This is what you should not. Right? Like the map of the world was drawn for us, but it was drawn by other people. And the reality is you're a unique person. You're going to have a unique set of experiences. Some of those old lessons will be true for you throughout life. A small number of them, but some. Many, you will uncover new, different versions that you will take on as the truth. The problem is, too many of us feel locked in by those early experiences. And so it's like the way I kind of talk about it, it's like if I had a pair of sunglasses right now, it's like if my whole life I was wearing pink sunglasses and I was walking around and I thought that the sky was purple and that the trees were like, had a magenta color to them. And I saw everything with this lens. And then one day somebody came to me and said, "Yeah, you're totally wrong. Those aren't the colors at all. That's you just your view is distorted because of these lenses you're wearing." The first thing I would say is you're lying. I'm seeing things as they are. It takes a lot. First of all, it takes recognition of the fact that the idea is true at all. Secondly, it takes humility because you've got to be able to say, "Oh my gosh, I've been looking at this this person in my life in a certain way my whole life, but it was because of my beliefs, not because of who they are." And then, if you're really, really brave, you actually try to take the glasses off. And most of the happier people that I know in life, and again, successful and happy can be two different things, depending
Hmm.
on how you measure success. But most of the happier people that I know in life, at some point, actually learn that and started being more willing to accept different versions of reality than their own. And if you're really brave and really have humility, you start gathering people around you who don't see the world the same as you because you understand there's a specific story in the book, but you understand that knowing other people's viewpoints and integrating all of them into yours actually gives you the closest thing to an objective, real version of the world. And when you have that, here's what I've seen are the outcomes. If anybody's thinking to themselves like, "Wait, this is way too hard and I don't want to do this. This sounds like horrible." You have less conflict. You can understand people you never were able to understand before. You can solve problems that you never thought were solvable in your own life because you now have all these other angles to look at that problem from instead of the one you've been trying to hit them through the rest of your life. And so I think it's a huge unlock to understand how subjective our life experience is.
Because it definitely makes sense when you were discussing about the emotional hooks, how a certain exit on a freeway could set you off. Because I
Oh, yeah.
remember passing a signpost that mentioned the village that my ex girlfriend moved to, and this was
There
my
you go.
first love. And every time I see it, bang, I'm back in that age. It's like you're reliving that moment when I passed the place where we first had our first kiss. Oh, it can come, and like you said in the book, you're actually like living in the moment, so you can feel happy and sad with these thoughts. And can you explain a bit about how emotional hooks are created and how they kind of get sort of planted in our minds? Like what is it about that causes us to have that, which then causes the stimulus, the perception,
Yeah, so I'll just riff off the story that you just told, Ian. And so you pass by the freeway exit where the old girlfriend used to live. And I'm going to make some stuff up. But let's say that when you were a kid, you weren't told that you were loved a lot. Or maybe you had some physical abuse or maybe emotional abuse at home. And people told you, you're worthless. Nobody's ever going to want to be with you. What do you even offer the world? Like, let's say that's part of how you grew up. And
yeah.
then you got a girlfriend. And when you got a girlfriend, it felt like, oh my gosh, maybe this is the one person that I'll get to spend time with. Maybe I finally found my soulmate who will take me away and prove that all those other people were wrong. And you're young and you're 14, 15, 16 years old or whatever. And you have a girlfriend that's great and you finally feel like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna conquer all those things that people told me I will never be able to do before. Maybe my parents, maybe my aunt, maybe my brother, whatever. Then the girlfriend breaks up with you. And now you go from this really, really big high to a really, really low low. Because now all those thoughts I just mentioned, they flip on their head. Now all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my God, all those people were right. I found the love of my life, but I couldn't keep her. I thought I was going to be happy, but I'll never be happy. I'll be alone for the rest of my life, right? All those old stories, this is why we were talking about before, all those old stories come back. Those are the hooks.
Hmm.
Now they hurt, right? It's like imagine literally like a fish hook hanging here, and somebody's got a fishing wire and they just pulled on it because you just got broken up with and you start doubting yourself because of all those stories from the past. And the hook is being pulled on and you're in pain. I talk about this in the book. Emotional pain and physical pain get processed in the same area of the brain. So when you say like you broke my heart, I'm hurting, we mean it literally. Our brain is processing the psychological hurt almost like physical pain. And so now you're hurting, those hooks are being pulled on. If you're a very aware, very conscious, very evolved person, maybe you go talk to somebody like a therapist or a good friend that you can work through this with, and you have meditation practice, and you say to yourself, hey, I really need to pick up myself and become a more whole person alone again and find myself. Maybe you do that. Most of us become reactive. Most of us try to find something so that the hook doesn't hurt us as much. Now, the first version I gave is like trying to go put some salve on the wound, maybe even pull the hook out and say, no, I am a good person. Look, this one person loved me. That probably means I can find other people who will love me, right? That would be the healthy version. Most of us, when this stuff happens originally, we're too young. We're not
Hmm.
practiced enough. We don't have the tools. So we look for something to numb the pain. And what do we all do after bad breakups early on in life? We go out drinking like crazy. We start smoking a lot of weed. We go watch a bunch of porn. We isolate. We do all the things that we need to do to lower the pain so that we can go out and function. And again, it works. Nobody would get problems if it didn't work. It actually works to reduce the pain. The problem, it doesn't solve the hook. It doesn't actually take the hook out. So next time you get broken up with, next time there's that hook gets pulled on, you have the same sort of problem. And I can go into the SPARROW model if you want me to go into it a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean that would be helpful because I found when I was reading it, it started thinking, oh, that was because I felt alone when I was younger. I didn't feel like I fitted in. So that's why my reaction to my ex is so strong when I see her because she was the first love I had. And I'm linking it to her, but it's to the emotion. And that's what
Yes.
I'm locked into, and that's the beauty of the book is that you let us go above the behavior, rise above it, but how then do we start using Sparrow to stop and go, actually, that's linked to here, and that's how I'm perceiving it. That's then, and then go down the chain, because I found that a phenomenal new concept that would change so many lives. How do we start using this for somebody who's maybe completely new to it?
Yeah. So let's give the example. Literally, we'll just work off the example that you just worked off. Let's say you drove by that exit and later that night you ended up either going out or staying home and drinking a lot. Okay. So I'll break it down by Sparrow for a second. You end up drinking a lot. Maybe you black out. Maybe you just start saying things or acting in ways you're not really proud of. If you have a partner, maybe you say really inappropriate things and they get really mad at you. The next day you wake up and it's a disaster. It's like you're in a fight with your wife. She's mad at you. You feel really bad, right? You got drunk the night before. You kind of remember half the stuff that happened. What I talk about in the book is nobody reaches out when the initial starting point happens. Everybody reaches out at the end. They wake
Yeah.
up. It's a really bad night. They had a fight with their wife. They call me. Hey, my wife is threatening to leave me. I need some help. And then what I do with them is I break down and say, okay, tell me what happened. So just so we're clear, if what if the story we're about to break down really happened, Ian, nobody would say to me, hey, on the way home, I passed the freeway exit where my old girlfriend used to live, and it really triggered me. And I got home and I was really upset. So I drank. And then that's why nobody says that. Not one person. what they say is, I got really drunk last night. My wife and I always fight about the drinking. And then this morning, I guess I called her some names or I said some things that she doesn't like. So she said she was going to leave me. They focus on the behavior they did and the outcome, and they want
Yeah.
to fix the outcome. My job is to then, okay, break it down with me. When did that drinking episode start? And they say, well, when I got home at 6 p.m. And I said, well, no. That's when you drank. Walk me through the rest of your day. What happened? Now, it would oftentimes take some work to have somebody realize that probably I'm going to make up a story here, but maybe you had a really, really stressful day at work. So stress is high. And you're feeling like, oh my God, I don't like this job anymore. Maybe I shouldn't be here, but what does that mean for my life and my family and my wife and everything? So you're driving home from work and then you pass the exit. And the exit is the trigger. I call it the stimulus. The exit just starts a process, but you see the exit and you're not even aware of this. And you say to yourself, so stimulus, perception, activation, response, outcome. Stimulus is the exit. Your perception is, oh my God, I miss those simple days with that first really good girlfriend. She loved me so much. I screwed it up. I've never had it as good since. I wish I could just go back to the days where everything was simple. I wouldn't have this really hard job and all these responsibilities. That's your perception of the highway sign. There are hundreds of other people passing that highway sign right with you. None of them have that perception. It's
Mm-hmm.
your perception. That's what makes this special. Stimulus, perception. Now you've got longing, you've got anxiety, maybe you have resentment and frustration about where your life is now. Those are the activations that the perception brought on. So you have the stimulus. It makes you perceive your life now compared to your life in the past. And that perception creates an activation. Activation is physical, it's also emotional, it's all the feeling words, physical and psychological. But importantly, it's massively affected by your past. Because if your perception of that relationship with that girlfriend was really good, you'd pass and you go, oh my God, that's where my first girlfriend lived. That's so nice. Your activation now is nostalgia and happiness, right?
Mm.
So perception to activation really, really matters because the reason you then go drinking at home is the activation. If you feel frustration, resentment, and anger over where you are right now, what I talk about in the book is you've learned ways to deal with frustration, resentment, and anger. That is why you go home and you drink a ton. It's not really because of the sign that you pass. It's not even really only because of the stress. It's because the stress activated with the trigger brought on these feelings. Those hooks are getting pulled. And now you say to yourself, okay, well, when I'm anxious and resentful, I drink. So you go home and you do what you normally do when you get anxious and resentful. But it works so well. You don't go home and say, I'm resentful and anxious. It's just the feelings occur and you know automatically what to do. So now we have to interrupt those things. What I talk about in the book primarily is how once you break one of these things down, I can guarantee you will see that same pattern happening over and over and over in your life. And
Yeah.
now you know the point where you can fix it.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
So if somebody's looking at their behaviors, would they need a coach to do this? Can they look at their own behaviors and think, because you talked in the book about a guy who would come home and if his wife's car wasn't there, he would start drinking. If he passed this particular point, it's like how his day built up to that point, but he had to have a trigger at that point. And then there's a bit about the thermostat where depending on your actions, you can lift up and down. And it was just made so much sense. Like every page, I was just coming back and rereading it. Do we get to that point where we don't we can see our own behaviors, or do we need somebody that can help us rise above it to say, that's your point, that's a problem, or can we see our own issues?
Absolutely. It takes practice like everything else in life. But yes, absolutely, right? So I can sit there now. Now, by the way, just because I know this doesn't mean I don't go through the cycles myself. So I'll be clear. So SPARROW is stimulus, perception, activation, response, outcome. That's a SPARROW piece. Then there's EAT, explore, accept, transform, which is how we complete the cycle. So you cannot learn without having the negative outcome, unfortunately, because you don't know that something needs to change unless you got an outcome that you don't like. Right? Like nobody goes on a trip, Ian, and goes like, man, that trip was really good. Let me break down everything I did to go on that really, really good trip so I could replicate it. That's something you might be good for us, but none of us do it,
Yeah.
right? You just had a good trip. In business, you're supposed to do that. If something works really, really well, you break it down so you can see where it works. But even there, you're normally looking for the things that you can make a little bit better, right? So the negative outcomes are essentially necessary for learning, and everybody will talk to you about that. Failure is where you actually learn the most, and that's one of the things I talk about in the book. Is if you want change, you better get comfortable with failure because it's going to come. The difference between the people who change and the people who don't change is the people who change, every time a failure happens, they go, wait, what was that? What happened there? So what happens for me now is if I have a really bad outcome, that doesn't really happen with drugs and alcohol anymore, but let's say my wife and I have a really big fight, or I have a really big fight with one of my kids. I still have the fight, which is still an outcome I don't like. But then on the other side of it, I go, wait, what happened? I didn't want to fight. I ended up in a fight. What happened? And then I break it down. And normally, somewhere in there was a perception or an activation issue, or I don't know how to deal with a certain feeling and I need to learn how to deal with it. So, yes, you absolutely can get to the place where you can do it. By the way, this is a little bit of a plug, but that's why I started Ignited, the online program, is if you need help with this, just join for a pretty small amount of money and get some help on it. But it's like we all have coaches. I mean, have you ever played any sports?
Yeah. For
What's your
football,
favorite?
soccer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so football, like, do the best players on the face of the planet, did they ever have a football coach?
Yeah. Everybody's got a
Yes,
coach at some point. You don't need to know everything. That's something I always say. Find the right teammates and the coaches for what you need.
100%. And we know the coaches matter, right? So a good coach matters. It's not weird, it's not surprising that a really good football coach gets a better football team, right? I mean, there's something they know how to do in coaching you. You should think about life the same way. If you want to get really, really good at relationships, get a relationship coach. If you want to get really, really good at changing your behavior, get a a transformation coach, a behavioral coach, or an addiction specialist, right? Like, too many of us think we have to figure this out on our own, and then we hem and haw and we maybe try a couple of things, but we really just keep trying the same thing over and over and over. And this is a brand new practice for most people. Looking this in depth into their behavior is a brand new practice for a lot of people. And so, um, yes, you can get there. It takes practice like anything else in life. What I found is the results are incredible because you can take your life in any direction you want with these tools. It's not even about addiction anymore. You can just take them in any direction you want.
Well, that's what I found great about the book was it doesn't matter if you just want to cut down your drinking, if you wanted just to be happier, healthier. There's something you can take from every section of this book, such as like the power of community. About how it can help just by having people to listen to, that you're not on your own. You're not the only person suffering with these thoughts, that a good set of people will take somebody back who maybe slips up, or they'll all listen and say, yes, that was a bad thing, but I done this. And I think that's the thing, taking away the shame from it by showing unconditional love in a community like that. I mean, I wasn't always a nice person. I've done some bad shit, and I still regret stuff from 15, 20 years ago. And it feels like it happened like yesterday. And I think that's what really hits home in the book. It's that moment when you say you were doing your best. You were doing
Mm,
your best when you spiked the volleyball to win the match, but you're also doing your best when you were chugging the vodka to try to fit in to party to feel like you were part of the group. You're doing your best from this low point to this high point, and that kind of, I can understand why that changes people's lives.
mm,
How do we make him like come to terms with that? Because acceptance was the hardest part of EAT for me. When you're stopping and
yeah.
thinking, I did this,
Yeah.
I did that. How do we even start that? Because the shame, the hatred, the whatever it is, starts in us. How do we avoid going into the spiral and actually seeing it for what it is and trying to make peace with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a really, really good question. It's funny that you said that acceptance is the hardest part because I think a lot of people skip over it and assume, well, maybe that's not important, or, I'll get to that later. I don't think you can get this right without acceptance. And
Mhm.
and the reason is there are multiple reasons, but I'll focus on one in particular. These behaviors are now part of you. This past is now part of you. If you can't come into acceptance with it, you're going to be fighting with yourself your whole life. And that fighting will create conflict, perception problems, and activations that will make you act out. And it's a little bit like, I'm sorry, I'm going to use a crude example that I talk about with a lot of my couples clients. A lot of relationships start out there, it's like moving into a brand new clean house. And it's beautiful. The walls are sparkling white. All the fixtures work perfectly well. You know, the dishwasher is clean. It's everything. It's amazing, right? All the furniture has never been touched. It's a masterpiece. And then you live in it. And are you in a relationship right now?
Not just now.
Okay. So, but you've been in ones before.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. It's life. Stuff happens. You fight. You disagree about things. You find out things about the other person that you didn't know initially that make you feel weird. And each one of those, sorry for being a little bit crude, it's like the family dog took a poop somewhere in the house and you went, oh, well, that doesn't really make me feel comfortable, but let's just sweep this one under the rug, or let's put a chair over it so nobody sees it, right? Let's cover it up. Some of these are really, really big. Like you go to dinner and you have a fight in the middle of the restaurant, or one of the partners starts crying because it's something really hard. Sometimes it's betrayal. It's really, really big stuff. But in most relationships, we avoid. We don't really fix. We don't get all the way down to the core issues and deal with them. Next thing you know, and this happens in individuals' lives. I'm just using a couple as an example. Next thing you know, that beautiful house you had is now full of little places where the dog took a crap all over the house. And then clients go, I can't even find my partner. If you're individual, it would be like, I can't even find a place where I'm at peace with myself. I don't even know anywhere in the world where I'm comfortable. Everywhere has little reminders, little stimuli, little triggers of the fights. We can't go to that restaurant anymore because that's where we had that fight. We can't listen to that artist anymore because that's where we went to the concert and then she threatened she was going to leave me. I can't watch that movie. I can't go to that place. I mean, like, everybody who's been in a relationship has been in a place where a lot of different areas of their life got marked by conflict in that relationship. When couples come to me to do this work, I say, well, we're going to have to take the poop bags and the shovels and we're going to have to go clean some stuff. We can't get to the other side of your relationship without cleaning the house. And a lot of them get really scared because many times they've spent 5, 10, 15 years not touching those places.
Mhm.
And so acceptance is about saying these experiences have been part of my life. I cannot undo them. I don't have a time machine. I can't reverse course. By the way, you probably wouldn't even want to because you have no idea what your life would have looked like if those experiences weren't there, right? You're just gambling that the other version of life would have looked better. What you have to do is come to terms with it and say, okay, I've made mistakes. I've said the wrong things. I've done the wrong things. Some of them I feel guilty about. If I've done enough of them, I may have shame around who I am and if I'm really a good person. And the only thing that I can do, the only thing that's available to me right now is to agree that I did what I knew how to do back then, and then to become the kind of person who doesn't do those things again. And if you can come to those terms, now you're ready to go do some work. because you're not hiding from the past. You're not running away from it. You're actually going to change the person you will become in order to not repeat your past mistakes.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think that's the thing is we don't shine the light in that side of so we create this whole character of who we are for work, who we are with friends, and there's like is it the Japanese one? It's there you wear a mask with friends, a mask with the public, and then you wear a mask of who you are as a person, and that made a lot of sense. Is how much we kind of fake who we are. How do you deal with that? And because you talk about experimentation, transforming, changing it, but how do we make sure we don't just fall into the pattern? We can rise above it, like a bird's eye view of it, to kind of to start making the work. Do you find like journaling? Because you talk about storytelling being helpful in the book. Do you get your clients
Yeah.
to kind of tell a different version of the story about what happened to them? How do you start
Yeah.
working to change the patterns?
I mean, there's definitely the practice of imagining what success looks like on the other side. That's certainly part of it. I have a few exercises that I work with clients called the perfect day exercise and a few things like that that I really like in terms of helping clients see a different version. Um, but going back to the sponge example, there are two ways. One of them is actually get as connected to the pain as you can, really like lean into it instead of running away from it. Sit in the discomfort and understand what is so uncomfortable about it. And from that place, start digging yourself out. That's one version. Uh, Another big version is shift the exposure you have so that you're around different people, you're consuming different information. You gradually shift through exposure to new ideas, right? Those are two, I call them the squeeze and kind of the osmosis version of doing things. Um, one is faster, one is slower, but the first one of leaning into pain is really difficult. It's hard to sit in that place. A lot of people don't want to do it and they run away from it.
So, how would you change this going forward for to deal with? Because I think we all have a level of shame. We all have a level of self hatred. Like our thermostats are very high with pressure. We all have our trigger points without realizing it. How would you start changing our understanding, our health approach to make people happier and healthier?
Yeah, I would say what you said a little bit differently. I would say at different points in time, we all struggle with those things. So if you live in that constant state of super high activation where your thermometer is really, really high and you don't have a lot, you're living in threshold, you're really struggling. I'm
Mm.
talking like acute psychiatric care, massive depression and suicidal ideation kind of acute struggling. Um, Most people can't survive there for very, very long. So what happens to us instead is we have these ups and downs, right? Now, again, you may go down because you drank a lot so you can calm your nervous system. I mean, I'm not saying all the coping is healthy, but most of us kind of go down. We may stay up for a while, we may stay down for a while. Now, you asked the question of how do we create change? How do you change that perception? Number one is the conversation we're having right now. Just realizing that you're not the only one struggling with this is big for most people. Then just understanding why it's happened. That's why I had Sparrow and Eat. Just being able to see, oh my gosh, I am still thinking and reminiscing about the old girlfriend because I don't like the life I have now. I don't like the relationship I have now, and it bothers me. So I'm thinking longingly about the past, which makes me hate my present even more. At least makes you go, okay, now I get it. I have two
Mm.
options. I can change my present, like I can change my job, my relationship, whatever. I can change all those things, or I can change my relationship to the past. But if I don't do either one, I'm going to keep being stuck here and there's nothing I can do. Understanding why you behave is another very important piece. And then you know what the biggest proof is when you start seeing change in yourself. So I think I give this example in the book too. A lot of clients will actually be successful in cutting back their drinking for a while. Like maybe they drink 6 or 7 drinks a night on average, and then they'll go down to five. The problem is the world we live in tells them five is still failure.
Yeah.
Because if you had a problem drinking seven, you should actually drink zero. That's the message we get from most places. So you take somebody who, instead of celebrating the fact that they now drink 2 drinks less, which is like 20% less, it's a substantial drop. Instead of celebrating that 20% drop, they feel like they failed. And then they go back to the 7, 8 drinks now. But if they were able to celebrate the 5 and then celebrate the 4 and then celebrate the 3, they may find out that they can have a drink here and there and it's not a big deal because they moved things down to a level that actually feels safe, at least for now. But if you are told that if you drink 7 drinks every day, you have to go to 0, that's really hard. It is really, really hard for most people to do that. So they go from 7 to 0. They have a really hard time holding on. Then they go, I'll just have 1, but they don't know how to have 1. So they end up having 7 again. And now they've been a failure. So behavioral change, normally the decision to change might happen like this, but the change normally actually takes some time. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to understand. First of all, many, many more people, as you've already said, many more people struggle with this than you realize. You are not alone. A lot of people are trying to figure this out, just like you right now. And then secondly, slow, gradual progress towards your end goal is great. If you can cut back your drinking by 10% every single week, what is it? We're by the time you get to the next holiday season, you'll be doing great. And we need to learn how to celebrate that, not punish it.
Because that's what I liked the book, was how you explained that even if you do make a mistake, you can come back. You're not a bad person. You're not at the end of the world. You just need to. The community, like your group, will accept people back, and they'll listen and they'll show love and support. They don't just shout like the majority of the situations we have here. I mean, I know it feels like 10 minutes, and we've been talking for an hour. So there's so many amazing things that are part of this book. But how do you want people to use the book? Because I found every page was a kind of an eye opener about behavior, acceptance, dealing with shame. It was so riveting. I'm not much of a reader at times, and I couldn't put it down. How do
that
we?
really means the world. I wrote the book kind of like choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Like the first 4 chapters, you probably kind of have to read through just to understand the ideas. But then after that, I break down SPARROW into the next 5 chapters, and you can read the ones that make the most sense to you and go back to the ones that you need to process later, or you can do what it sounds like you did, which is just read the thing through. But I have exercise in the back. I have stories throughout the whole thing. The idea is really, really for you to just use it like a manual. So you can keep going back to the pieces that help you. I'll be really frank, I've been working on this for 15, 16 years with myself. Um, it is endlessly easier now. I kind of live my life by these principles now. I don't struggle with addiction at all, even though I was a daily heavy, heavy user of drugs back in the day. But what I found, and the reason I wrote the book, is I find that these tools are helpful for far more than addictive behavior. Anytime that you really feel like you need to change your behavior in a big way, I think these tools really help. And so, yeah, I want people to feel welcome to just pick it up. Whether you're just scrolling on Instagram too much and you find that you're losing 3 to 4 hours a day just scrolling content and it's blocking you from showing up to things the way you want to, or you're addicted to porn, you have to masturbate 3 times a day in order to be able to go to sleep, um, or like I said, you're eating too much, or of course you're drinking too much or using too many drugs. One piece that I didn't mention is, and this is something I'm still guilty of to some extent, and I use this principles to help me with that, is sometimes we get addicted to good things like workaholism is one of those things where you can get quote unquote addicted to being a big performer and doing well, but then there are other areas of your life that suffer because of it. And so some people come to me for that. It's actually the thing that they're addicted to actually does a lot of good for them, but it also does a lot of bad.
Because that's what I liked about the book, was when you were talking about the Christmas tree lights, where you
Mm,
pull a bit out and it starts. You see this massive tangle of mess, but then as you pull a
yeah.
wee bit here, you see where the next knot is. Then you how to pull to open it up, and it might be a bit time consuming. But every time I was thinking of things, or I didn't react immediately. I went, okay, is this a stimulus? Is this a hook? Why
Mm,
it really begins to open up your mind. You don't automatically go through the automatic programming. of the self-hatred, beating yourself up, you kind of go, okay, what is this? What's causing it? It is honestly a masterpiece, and it should be given out to addicts, people at school, CBT people, NLP, people to just understand how their brain works, to stop beating themselves up and to look at their history to create a better present that will then create a better future for them. But what happens if we do make a mistake? How do we not let it just destroy you there and then?
I think that's a mindset, man. I think there's a quote from Michael Jordan, and maybe in the book. I honestly, there's so much in the book, I forget sometimes what I put in there. But just know every successful person failed many, many times before they achieved the success that you now know them for. Michael Jordan, I think this is in the book. Michael Jordan talks about how he became the success he became because he missed 3,000 shots in games.
Yeah.
But he also talks about how he took in 25 different games, he was tasked, including some very big games, obviously, he was tasked with taking the last second shot and won the game 25 times. So the best player on the face of the planet only succeeded in this crazy way 25 times in his career. What he doesn't say in that quote is that he actually was tasked with taking the last second shot 26 times and missed. So the best basketball player that ever existed missed more than he made the most important shots of his life. And many of us judge ourselves because we're not perfect. So get comfortable with failure if you want to succeed.
Well, I've literally got chunks of questions where I think there'll be podcasts on their own, and we can really go into on another one if you want to come back on. But what would you want people to take from this? Because I hope I've kind of given people a flavour of how life-changing this book truly is. And I genuinely mean this. I cannot thank you enough for giving me an advanced copy of this. But how would you want people to start using the book and take this from the book to go forward? Is it just simply
Honestly, I just want people to use it. I mean, it's a lot of work to write a book. My favorite thing on the face of the planet is when somebody reads it, has either the feedback that you have or tells me, man, this changed a lot for me. Thank you so much. That's all I care about, is that people take advantage of the content so that they can make their life better.
Do you want them to kind of realize that, like you say in the book, fuck shame, that you're doing your best at the time, but let's start pulling the tangles out to change your life?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. But what I care more than anything about is people living a life they're happy with. Living a life where they wake up in the morning and they can put a smile on their face. They go to sleep at night and they feel comfortable. That's what matters more than anything.
And how would you want people to get in touch, to join, listen to your podcast that you have with your wife, which is fantastic? How do you want them to join your group, to work with you?
So the easiest way to find out about everything around the book is a website called readunhooked.com. And then Ignited, IGNTD, like I have on my hat right here, .com is where you can sign up for the program. And I'm on all social media as Dr. Adi Jaffe, Dr. Adi Jaffe, and please connect.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.